Right, this is a BSA R-10. I'm going to show you how to pretty much strip it down completely. I do have various videos that show you how to strip individual bits to do various things like servicing fill valves and all the rest of it, but I'll do a full strip down on this one. Obviously you want to remove the buddy bottle, make sure that the rifle's clear and doesn't have any pellets in it, and then proceed. There's no right way or wrong way of stripping this. You can do it in any order you like, but I'll start off with the regulator. I want to remove that, so I'll just do that, which loosens part 38, and then there's a grub screw in there. Oh, sorry, not a grub screw, a bolt that you want to remove. Go, and that just pulls off. That's the regulator block out the way. Then you want a 10mm spanner or some other wrench, but it's basically a 10mm. That then removes that, which is how it fixes into the stock. And then this particular rifle doesn't have any anti-tamper, so it'll be the same as the export models. I do have other videos that show how to remove the anti-tamper. Right, this is a 3mm Allen key. Some rifles have a 3mm one side and a 4mm the other, but basically use an Allen key that fits. That's the trigger mechanism out the way. Then we'll move on to the bolt handle. Again, this is a 3mm, it goes in there, and make sure you see, if you try and turn this, it turns the whole bolt. You don't want to do that, because if you happen to crank that, you could damage the internal. So basically hold on to the ball and then loosen it off. That comes off. Right, then there's a cap in here. It's basically a blanking cap. You want a flat screwdriver that fits in the groove nicely, and remove that. Bear in mind this rifle's been stripped before, so it's obviously easier to easier to strip than a rifle that's full of Loctite and glue and whatever else. 3mm Allen key in there. Hang on to this bit because it can shoot out sometimes if the hammer spring is under preload. There you go, that's all come out in one piece. That's the power adjuster, hammer spring. This is an aftermarket spring guide. And then this bit is a bit that most people forget, and then they contact me going, oh, I can't do the next step, because basically you need to make sure that this bolt that we loosened is completely removed. So you can do that by poking something all the way through, and there the bolt is. Make sure that you completely remove that, otherwise you'll not be able to do the next step. Right, you'll see there's a tiny little slot in here. You need to get a pokey device. It can be a small screwdriver or whatever, and then you push the banjo and then push it backwards, and you'll notice that plastic guide's moved back. Pull it back a little bit, not all the way, just a bit, and then you'll notice there's a hole here, and there's a bolt underneath it, but you can't get to it with an Allen key because of this. But by loosening this and pushing it back, you then can push the guide out the way. I'll show you again. Use a pokey device and push it in there to slide the plastic back, and then now you can see that you've now got access to the screw in there. If you can't push this plastic back, refer to the comment earlier about this screw. Make sure it's completely removed, otherwise you won't be able to. Again, 3mm Allen key. if your rifle's been blueprinted, this might be a 4mm, but basically use an Allen key that fits. You notice I've turned the whole action upside down while making sure that it stays together. Lift that off. That's what I would refer to as the hammer tube, and then there's your breech. And this particular one, right, let me just remove this shroud adapter. Just get it out the way. Right, now you'll notice you can't remove the transfer port unless you pull the magazine retaining catch out the way. That has to slide out before you can get the transfer port out. These can sometimes be a little bit tight, just give it a wiggle. It's not screwed in or anything, it's basically just held in, well, it basically just fits in the hole. And the reason you can't pull it out until you remove this is because that sits in that slot, so it stops you from pulling it out. So that's the transfer port out. You'll notice there's a little spring in here, and there's also a ball. That's the spring. I'm just using a little magnet. There we go. Suck the bits out. And then there's a bigger spring here. Pull that out. And then there's a ball in there. Pull that out. Right. This now gets you to the probe. If you want to remove the probe, I believe it's a 2.5mm Allen key. These are normally Loctited in place. Okay, this one looks like it's going to be a tough one. I may be teaching you to suck eggs, but sometimes when you can't remove a bolt with a normal hex Allen key, you can sometimes get away with using a Torx bit, which is the sort of star-shaped bit of a similar size that fits into the same hole, but obviously it has sharper edges, which can then loosen off bolts sometimes. This one's a bit worn, so I'll do that later. But if you wanted to remove the barrel, again, I think this is a 2mm Allen key off from memory. It's another one that the screws are no good. Let's just get a Torx bit on the case. This is a, I can't remember, I think, I can't remember what size it is, and it's not marked, but basically you noticed I couldn't undo it with the Allen key, but the Torx bit's working lovely. These are normally Loctited in, so they can be quite tight. If you wanted to, you could apply a bit of heat to soften the Loctite. That's the barrel out the way. These two grub screws hold the barrel in. And so that's the barrel out. This probe I'll probably fight with that, and in the interest of speeding up this video I won't show taking that out, but basically if you remove that you can then pull the whole probe out, and you can slide the guide out, and yeah, basically putting it back together, similar process, just, you know, put the barrel back in, tighten those up. Make a tip here is if you are assembling it again and you want to make sure you've assembled it correctly, just make sure the O-ring's out the way, then you can use your probe. Imagine that's the one that's come out. You can pop that in there and drop it into the hole in the barrel, wiggle the barrel until this is nice and flat, and then you know it's centered, and then you can tighten the barrel back up while holding your probe in there. I suppose you could use a correct size drill bit or something else, a rod, but basically that's your barrel back in place, and then don't forget to put your O-ring back in, transfer port back in, magazine release catch back in, ball and spring, and basically that's that. But I'm digressing because this is about stripping it, not rebuilding it. Right, this is the hammer tube. This is the firing valve, and this part 38 just unscrews, and that's the firing valve. And then this is the hammer tube with the hammer, and this is the sear pin. If you want to strip this, again, 3mm Allen key, there's a grub screw in this. You want to loosen that off. Again, these are Loctited in. There we go. And that's your sear pin. I can pull out. And then your hammer can slide out the back. There's sometimes a little red polyurethane bumper in there. Hammer. That grub screw that we've just removed screws in there. And then that's the hammer bearing, hammer tube, and the firing valve body. This, if you want to strip it, you can put a bolt of some sort in there. That's just the stalk for screwing into the stock. And you can use long nose pliers, or I've got a little tool that I use for doing this. That just unscrews, cap comes off, there's a spring, and then the firing valve or knockoff valve or exhaust valve or whatever you want to call it. There's an O-ring in there, O-ring on there. There's an O-ring inside here. There should be no reason to remove that, but if you really want to, it's very small pair of circlip pliers. Remove the circlip and then fight with that little brass ring to get to the O-ring that's inside there. Like I said, there should be no reason to mess with that. And yeah, like I said, building's pretty much the reverse. I have videos on polishing the trigger sears, servicing the regulator, fitting a Huma regulator, fitting a Haag shroud, changing the hammer for one of the ones that I sell, changing this, or part of the polishing trigger sears, and then also changing it if you want, if you've got an early Mark 1 where you had to pull the bolt back an extra bit to remove the magazine, you can do that by modifying this or replacing it for one that has this cutout in it. What else have I got? And obviously there's videos on my channel that show you how to fix all the leaks on all these. So if this video doesn't cover what you need, there'll more than likely be another video on my channel that shows you how to. Some of the videos that I have on, you won't find them if you look on YouTube. You'd have to get the link from my website, either on the fitting instructions page or on the guides and links page on my website, because I don't want them widely available. Right, I hope that helps. I'll try and do another video at some stage of putting this all back together, but that's all I've got time for at the moment.